Hello everybody, this is Maniac for Bricks, and welcome back for another BrickLink haul. So in the first video that I did not too long ago, I mentioned that I bought a couple of parts from Camel City Brick House on BrickLink, link it down in the description below, and was trying to complete a couple of official Bionicle figure sets that I did not have back in the day, but found the parts recently, and trying to work towards completing many figures from my Bionicle collection. Now, along with that BrickLink haul, I've noticed a lot of really cool parts in their store, especially in purple. And purple is one of those categories of Lego that I have in trace amounts and kind of hard to build something from what I already have in completely that color. And there's also different shades of purple, so mixing them together would somewhat work, but again, not in large quantity. So there are things like dark purple, which is a common purple that you see nowadays. There's the old version of purple, which was around like the Technic competition stuff in the 90s and a little bit into the 2000s. You got the medium lavender stuff that's also made nowadays with things like Friends and Elves. But going from that, there was actually a whole bunch of them in Technic and Bionicle in different time periods that I thought this store could actually help with. I wanted to make a MOC for some time prior to the BrickLink order, and I decided that I would use this as the push forward towards that MOC. So I've already opened up the package itself. I've already accounted for everything. Once again, Camel City Brick House has provided a paper insert for everything to show the inventory, everything that was placed in the order, and that he had already double checked them. My check marks on this hand side was actually my re-inventory of them, and everything checks out a-okay. The only thing that I found a little bit confusing was one of the pieces in purple that didn't show up the same kind of purple as the rest of them. Maybe it was just the closest classification on BrickLink. I don't know if there was a separate category for it. There is also the weird violet color, which is like off from blue. I actually do have some right here as an example. So like a traditional blue that you would have would be like this color. Then you would have violet, which was usually used in like the mid-2000s, around the time of Knights Kingdom 2, and you can see a bit of difference. The flag pieces are in the violet color, whereas the chair is the normal blue color. But even stranger than that, the piece that I have in purple is not the same purple as the rest. The dark purple you can see down here on these points, and then this is the regular purple. It's like a little bit darker, a little more bluish, but it's not the same kind of purple as the one from the 90s they would see right here. So 3 different shades of purple going on, but still an interesting thing nonetheless. That was just a little personal note for me. I don't have a problem with the BrickLink Solar if that's not what it was, because it's still a fitting purple that I could use in some MOCs later. There was also some trans purple that was added to this list that I was happy to order as well. And there was the only discrepancy that I had, which is again a minor issue, was that one of these Technic pieces was slightly varied from another one. And I'll show that in just a moment as we get to what I've already built out of most of this and a few other extra parts. Some of you may have seen on the main channel on Maniac 4 Bricks, I had a live stream on my birthday, January 26, 2021, where I went through over 20 pounds of Lego in bulk. This is a gift that I got from my parents, and was a lot of really great parts in there. And some of the parts included were for a Technic Darth Vader, way back in the day, like early 2000s. And I decided to take some of those parts, because it was an incomplete model, I decided to take some of those parts and add them in to what I was building for this MOC. So here's one of the bags. It was already opened. It has some smaller bag of a lot of small parts in there. I'm going to keep them as they are just to avoid, spilling them all over the place. And as far as the rest of the parts, it is a large sea of purple. And it looks fantastic. I know that there are some older purples in there, and I think they will work okay as long as I have them in the right spots. But this is what I've been working on for roughly a few hours after inventorying the parts. Maybe a little bit less than that. I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure. I didn't keep track of the time for it. But this is part of a dragon-based MOC that I want to build. This was an assembly that I created first on BrickLink Studio, and using a few different colors here and there, but I think this version of it is much better than what I started out with. So there was a main mechanism towards the middle of it that I've seen on a Technic telehandler that I grew up with around 2010 or so, and I wanted to try to implement that in here because it would be a very neat function. It gets me to learn more about the worm gear function in mock building form instead of just building it from the sets, and instead of in a usual worm gear wheelhouse. So, actually constructing one from scratch, basically. But I also wanted to try this out by using two sides of the worm gear so they can make a wing function. So that way, when this is actually turned, it will make the wings fold out from each other and in opposite directions. So I was thinking, well, if it's on the other side of the gear, it should work fine that way. Yes, it does. Now, the part that I had a little discrepancy with, but again, not going to really blame the seller for this. It's an easy thing to mix up, and I don't think it's really affecting the model that much, are these two pieces here, these triangular coat hanger shaped pieces. One of them has a little bit more of a slant to it than the other one does. It points all the way down towards the end of it, whereas this one, it's a little bit off from that. This is a more modern version of the piece. This is the classic version of it. It doesn't really affect it other than aesthetics, and it's going to be in the inside of the model, so it's really not a big deal for me. The outside will look just fine. Now, as far as this whole thing goes, it's looking really great. I love how the purple comes together for this. Originally, I didn't even have the purple beams used here, but I thought afterwards this would be a great place to use them. And this is how it works. There is a small knob that's on the bottom here, at least for right now for the mock, that I simply turn this, and it will unfold the wings in opposite directions, kind of making a V shape. So it almost makes these bat wings line up with each other, which is just an added bonus to it. I didn't even intend that originally, but I do like that a lot better that way. So originally the design of this mock, or this part of the mock, it's not the full thing yet. The original design of this was to have the bat wings not only fold in on each other, but also be facing downward. And then when the gear is turned, maybe another cam mechanism or so incorporated with it would actually have them fold outward. Kind of like the Nuvok and Turaga Doom set from Bionicle, the official LEGO set. It has large wings that are basically pulled this way, pointing downward. And then as the model unfurls, they point out. Maybe they point up. I haven't built it in a while. I have it somewhere in the collection. I'm still running through that. So I'm sure it's a little bit different from that. But you could look it up, and it's in the description. So anyways, this one is a little bit different from that, especially for that function, because as the wings fold up, it doesn't actually fold them downwards or upwards, as I had originally intended. But I think this is fine as it is. I think it still presents a nice, imposing design to it. And if there is a way to change that a bit further to make these wings look like they're folding inward more, then let me know in the comments. I would be happy to learn more about this. I'm still learning a lot of Technic functions. But as this stands, it's mostly there. So as you can tell, as I'm moving these back and forth, when they're all foiled up, they don't actually line up like perfectly straight. They are actually leaning off a bit to the side here. Now that has to do with the worm gear function itself, and after much experimentation, I found out a kind of flaw with this so far, but something I'm going to have to live with until I find a better design. The worm gear inherently is going to have a spiral design to each of the tooths on the gear itself, and that is not going to perfectly line up from one side of the gear to the other. Therefore, the gears that attach onto them are not going to be perfectly lined up as well. But I can still move them a little bit by some friction pins in order to kind of straighten things out, whether it's in the upright position or when it's folded out. So technically here, they're not perfectly folded at the same length, but I can move this a little bit by the friction joints and friction pins, and it will be just fine enough. It still gets the presence across very well. I do like this mechanism so far. This is probably one of the more complex things that I've done lately in Technic, and basically from scratch, like a little bit of inspiration from an actual LEGO set. But I haven't seen another LEGO set that uses this worm gear design for wing folding like this. It was just a little bit of trial and error on a computer, and then actually testing it out with parts to see how practical it was. But I'm really liking this so far, and hopefully I can make more of it going forward. I do have a lot of parts in here that I already have inspiration for how the rest of the model will be built. I've joked about that this would basically look like a Bionicle version of Ridley from the Metroid games, which is a large purple dragon-like figure. It's not intended to be that, but it is funny that it is kind of leaning in that direction a little bit, and I think it's just going to look fantastic, especially when it's getting a whole bunch of functions like this built into it. It's definitely going to be a large figure, some of the larger figure that I've made in the past. So I'm really looking forward to this one all the way through. Now these pins on the ends of it are to easily attach it onto a body. I don't know if I'm going to have a prefab body piece that's going to go for it, but at least I have the option for it, and at least starting to branch it out to the rest of it, because I've mainly worked on this function alone up to this point. I have worked a little bit on some other things based on the parts that I had in here, and working on some hand designs. I wanted to have these kinds of fingers, or like large nails on the ends of them, but still figuring out things from there as to how that will go together. I may use some different pieces, or, you know, maybe build upon what's already here, but I am looking forward to that nonetheless. Got a lot of tubes in here, which I think are easy accents for any part of the model, and the way that these tubes are more magenta color as opposed to the dark blue or dark purple that they usually would, you know, most of this thing has. I think it'll be a nice accent there. And a couple other pieces around here that are good for other things. I had already thought about using these two torso pieces as part of a large torso that kind of angles a bit. So I might have to fill in the whatever gaps are in between there, but it would be the right amount of girth to fill out a figure like this from one side to the other. I've also considered these yellow pieces. It's basically this spike piece that I have in the original set, but found an extra one through the BrickLink order, and was like, well, I could use that as another accent color too. The yellow on the ends of different spikes and things. That could be for the arms, the legs, the tail, maybe the toes, and I do have plenty of yellow pieces, so that will be easy to add in with a whole bunch of these. There's also a couple of transparent dark pink pieces that I've picked up for another MOC. It would be a space-themed MOC, which I've been putting off for a long time, like several years at this point. I've wanted to make a whole bunch with different color schemes, different styles, and different functions to them, and this is the start of that process. So, this is going pretty well. I would love to hear about the wing design, the wing function in the comments below. I do actually have a little bit of dark brown that I've added in there as well, and I still want to gather more dark brown in the future, but that was intentional. Having those in there wasn't running out of parts. I also thought about using frictionless pins in a whole bunch of areas to make the wings move a little smoother, but thinking that this would be a very posable figure and that the function already moves fine as it is, I don't think I'm going to change it too much. And of course, right as I say that, it pops out of place. That's literally the first time it's done that, and I've played with this thing back and forth several times. So thank you for watching this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully there's more about this MOC process in the future, in the near future, hopefully. And I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you for watching. I think I already said that. Peace, love, and fun.